Okay, so hello again, and welcome to the intimate workshop about intimacy. Intimacy in terms of experimenting with different contexts where therapy can occur. This is maybe the overall topic we would like to open. We would like to discover what kind of difference makes the context of where the therapeutic work takes place. So we will be talking a bit about our experience, our stories, mine in the Czech Republic and Susan's in California, United States. And we will be also very excited if we would hear your stories or your ideas or your reflections, of course.
So Pavel, when I was doing a little bit of tweaking on the PowerPoint, all of a sudden it comes up all of your information on the right side of the computer. And I don't know how it came up, but I was very pleased. And so I wonder if you could like introduce a little bit about yourself and your passions at this point in time, because I really loved reading that.
Okay, maybe we can both tell something about ourselves for the start.
Right.
Then maybe we could also ask others here who joined and who would like to say something about them. Then we would tell more about our journey, about our stories. What do you think? Is that okay? Well, so if Susan invited me, so I can start just by saying a couple of sentences about me. My name is Pavel. I have to rewrite my name at the screen. Sorry about it. I'm joining this workshop from Brno in the Czech Republic in Europe, where I live and work. This gathering is important for me because Taos Institute and the ideas of social construction are with me for many years. And we also met with Susan quite a couple of years ago, right? It's maybe already 13, 14 years when we met at the Summer Institute that was organized by Hardin Anderson and people from Canankin Institute in Mexico. And I was quite young at the time. I was 28, I think, 29. And for me, all this area was new. Psychotherapy was new. Family therapy was new. But I already knew that this is the way I would like to work. The way it's very much based on relationships, on equal relationships. That is driven by humanistic approaches. That is very horizontal and participatory. So I fell in love with the work of Hardin Anderson and Ken Gergen, and I learned a lot about Tom Anderson, who I unfortunately didn't met, and about others. And my professional life is very much connected with the topic of addictions, drugs and addictions, but also mental health in general, in broader terms. My training is in systemic therapy, but I also was involved in the trainers training in Helsinki with Jaakko Seikkula, where I learned more about the open dialogue model. And this is something I will be also talking about a bit, because the practice we are now doing in Brno with the team Recovery Brno, within the narrative group that I co-founded, is quite based on the network meetings that were developed by open dialogue people, especially Jaakko Sekula. So this is what I would like to share the most today, the experience when I don't work alone as a therapist. I work always in a pair. I always work in a pair with someone who has some his or her lived experience with addiction, and we work with the networks, with families, networks in their own homes. So this is something that I'm very excited about, because it's very different type of work. I was also working as a social worker and community worker, also as a psychologist, as a psychotherapist, but most of the time it was one-to-one work, and we were working from mostly from the office or from our premises. But now when we are going to their homes, and we are in a team and we work with network, it's really a different kind of feeling, a different kind of work that I would like to share with you. And this is also something that connects us with Susan, because we don't know each other so much in a person, but I have the feeling that we connected for so long time through different means. We wrote an article together, and we were in many meetings together. We are in the Collaborative Dialogic Practices Network together. We both do trainings in the collaborative dialogic practices, so we have many connections. So do you want to say something about your side?
Yes. So I originally trained, and I think everybody already knows this, I trained with Harry Delishan. Harleen Anderson wasn't at the Institute when I first came there. And then she came back from Boston, and as a trainee at the Institute, it was an immersion into a completely different type of thinking and being with clients. And I really found that to be one of the highlights of my experience in life, and really something that has lived within me since. And this was in 1983, so it's been quite a long period of time that I've been living with these types of ideas that of course continue to evolve. But I was one of the early students in my 20s that Harry was around, Tom Anderson was around, Jaakko was around, Ken Gergen was around, but really it was a lot of Tom Anderson and a lot of Harry that shared very much similar ideas on how do we help people that are the most vulnerable, and how do we stop doing things that might accidentally add to that vulnerability as clinicians. And I think for both of them, they took the idea of being clinicians, whether that's life coaches or licensed in some other type of board that says that you can or cannot do certain things. And there was this common theme of it certainly wasn't about ourselves and being agents of change, but how can we collaboratively help people in the ways that they want to be helped. And I want to add John Schotter into that, because, you know, he was very instrumental as well. So from a very early age, I thought these ideas were, I used to tell people, these ideas gave me a voice to, because I was already kind of thinking this way about, you know, being with people And I have lots of stories that my staff has heard that before I came to the Institute and I was following different type of theoretical orientations, I would forget to do them. So I'd like to put a sticky note, on my desk that said, you need to positively reframe, you need to do this, you need to do that, because I was too already engaged in the conversation. So growing up in the Institute, where it was a very embracing opportunity. It was really ideas that, again, not to over talk about this, but that really lived within me. So when I eventually became faculty on the Institute, and one of the things that I did is that on Tuesdays, we had a training format where people would train all day with us, both didactically and then we would spend, I think it was an hour didactically, and then the rest of the time was spent with us being in teams. So we never worked alone. And so that team might be 2 people, it might be 4 people. We might have supervisors involved or supervisors not involved, but there was always this multiple opinions for the clients that were in ways of positivity and in ways of seeing their strengths and not focusing on weaknesses. So when I moved to California, I decided to go move here, and I had, a young daughter, and I started teaching at a university, which I just loved because it allowed me to teach in ways that I felt that I could share what the experiences that I had as well. And in 2007, I got an email from Texas about doing therapy with horses. And I had bought horses for my daughter when she was young, so we would have something to do together, kind of like that witness that Lynn Hoffman talked about as a parent. And because I was a single parent. And so I had most of the doctoral students and master's students that were interested in marriage and family therapy come with me to open this endeavor of using my personal horses with we were doing it for free with a organization that was a foster care organization, but also for the most hopeless of clients. So you would see children there that maybe they were 17 and they had 21 different therapists. The last thing in the world that they wanted to do was engage in therapy. And so we also were able to see parents who were very much in danger of losing their children. And I can remember the first time being with people called clients in a place called a horse ranch. Because a horse ranch is so much other things. It's nature and it's normalness. And there's talk about horses, but there's not talk about depression or anxiety or any of these types of things. And so it became, even in that first day I still remember the first clients that came out, an endeavor where it was like night and day compared to being in an office setting. Whereas at Institute, we were able to not talk about labels or diagnoses or deficiency language to describe, or even pathways that people believed in that would help this type of person or that type of person. We were all people together having conversations about what they wanted to. And and each person had kind of their own, because there were so many students, each person had their own individual and their own relational therapist. And we would see, for example, our first client was a woman that had lost her children, and they were up for adoption. And so they kind of were really just throwing her a bone to let her come in at that point in time. And what happened is that the first time she arrived with a suitcase full of pictures. So not only to show us, we were a group of clinicians, but to show her children, because she had not really seen her children in 4 years. The therapist early on that she was involved with the state agency had decided that she was too toxic to see her children. And so she kept on fighting and fighting and fighting against that to be able to see the children. And I can remember one day I had the children there, and I asked the oldest girl, she said, my mom's having another child. And at first, it was about that period of when we had the Octomom, you know, and Tom Anderson used to always talk about prejudice. And it's so easy to have prejudice because we live in a world of prejudice. So when she first said that, I thought to myself, your mom has lost all of her children when she's having another child. And I looked into her eyes, and she says, I'm so happy my mother's having a child. And so the next thing I thought in my mind was like, what was wrong with you that you've had that thought? But then the next words out of my mouth were, would you like for her to be able to come? And so what happened is the mother came, and eventually she was able to have all of her children return home. The children now are in college, or they've graduated from college, and their lives have completely changed, as well as the mother. And this mother was an amazing, delightful mother. But I do not think if we would have not had the team of multiple therapists and the natural setting, that these types of things could have occurred, because they were so severe at that point in time. We were kind of like on the last leg. And, you know, I was telling some people, I think yesterday in a gathering, is that I heard from one of the daughters who probably was in 3rd grade, and now she's going to college. And the youngest child, because they proceeded to have 3 more children, the youngest child called me up because both of her dogs had died, and she was feeling lonely. And she was missing a brother that had died. And so she had this wonderful dialogue of wanting to engage in some conversations and wanting to engage with her family in some conversations because she was feeling alone at home. And it was just such an honor to still be able to have some type of conversations with this family who was doing well. And probably they didn't really even need to talk to me, but I'm kind of like an auntie or something, you know, like just popping in and out of their lives, either for celebrations when children are born, people are graduating from high school, or for things like this. And so when I started doing this in 2007, by 2010, because it took me a while to teach my last class. And I taught my last class in 2010. But I couldn't return to teaching, although it was much easier. I had pay, you know, I had a paycheck, you know, twice a month. I had security. I had a lot of things that in this world of money that was important. But ethically, I couldn't go back and do something that I didn't feel that was as proficient as what happens with these families that are very hopeless and have very hard journeys of suffering that they're on. And so what the Institute has informed or has became is a place where very serious clients are referred by word of mouth. So a lot of our clients are they might have drug issues like Pavel. They might have active, what we call psychotic symptoms, or just plain not wanting to live because of all the trauma that they've been in. And so, you know, for us and for our clients, the Institute has kind of become a home, and they refer people to us. It does not feel that we're therapists. And so in 2020, when everything was kind of closed down here in California, we started doing in-home therapy, but via telehealth. And we of course had dabbled with that in the past. We had found that because of the nurturing way that we came in and participated with our clients and teams, that we had a very similar success rate. And so now at this point in time, we're going into people's homes. And I really love going into people's homes. As much as I love the horses, I really like going into people's homes and having this honor of seeing things in real life. At first, you're a stranger and they're hosting you. But then after a while, that relationship becomes so egalitarian. And I was talking with someone the other day, Pavel, you have a story on this, but I was talking with someone the other day, and this family had 2 Chihuahuas that, they were very, very protective of the mother, and they were not the little Chihuahuas, but a Chihuahua mix. And so the barking that they did, was like a pit bull barking, and you've got 2 of them together. And they were not very happy to see us. And the last time I went in there, these dogs were so happy to see me. Like, they're jumping on top of me and things like that. And I'm just like, yeah. And the mother said, you're like family here. And, it is really kind of what we do, is that we become like family with these clients. So that's my long-winded story. I'm sorry I took up so much time. I don't know who would like to go next. And also, my screen is so big. Is it supposed to be this way, or is it supposed to be a cascade? Did I do something wrong?
No, this is my fault, or I was experimenting a bit with the format of screen, but I will try to make it egalitarian.
Okay. Yeah, because I can't see anybody, and so it's like
okay.
Yeah, I'm talking to myself.
yeah, sorry about it. Yeah, it would be nice to learn also something about you, about your context you are coming from. Of course, you don't have to, but it would be nice.
Hi, I'm Emma. Hi there. I actually work with Susan in Now I See a Person Institute. I was very lucky to find the Institute. I grew up in Northern Ireland, and in the time of the Troubles, and my family were very heavily involved with this peace centre called Coromila. And they used it was a safe place for people to come together that wouldn't normally be able to have conversations with each other because they were in conflict with each other. So it provided a safe space for people to come in and have dialogue with each other, meaningful dialogue, but also not dialogue as such, because they also used art, storytelling, music, lots of different mediums within that dialogue as well, to bring people together so they could learn to coexist and move on to a more peaceful future. And so that was my kind of background. And I saw just through that collaborative space of being together, where we had learning conversations together, where we gathered, you saw real change happening and people's perspectives changing, and people respecting each other's different perspectives. So and then obviously I was a youth and community worker in Scotland and Australia and America. And So it's been an absolute delight to work at I see a person, because just that collaborative dialogue that happens between people is just life-changing, where people haven't had that space to reflect and feel heard. It's I see people like find their voice, their own inner voice, and it's not about, giving people skill sets. It's not about you putting your knowledge on them. It's really them finding their powerful inner voice to be able to reflect and move on with their lives in a more meaningful way for them. So it's been really lovely to hear your story, Pavel, today. I haven't heard it before, so thank you for sharing. And it's great to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, may I ask, so you live in Northern Ireland now? Or
No, I'm actually in Scotland at the moment.
you are in
Edinburgh.
Scotland now? Okay.
Yeah. So
it's also evening for you.
it is, yes,
Okay.
it is. We're only an hour apart, I think. Yeah.
And the name of the organization you are involved in, can you repeat it?
Yeah. Well, I work at the moment with Dr. Swim.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So okay.
We're doing some research together. So
Okay.
yeah,
Thanks.
it's been good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I think you had said, Emma, that a while ago you were working with some organization in Ireland. I don't remember. Is that what you were saying, Pavel?
Oh, is that what?
Yeah.
Yes, the Coromila.
Cora. Oh yeah. That is, Cora.
Yes, yeah, in Ireland, Northern Ireland. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can go. I started working with Dr. Swim a while ago. It was really frustrating finding a good therapy site in Los Angeles, because they're so like to learn. They're so focused on diagnoses and like
Yeah.
whatever theoretical orientation. So it was definitely like a desert in finding a good place. But yeah, working with Dr. Swim has been really nice and encouraging, and seeing just the humanity in the field. And I still have worked with so many therapists, and I've never found anybody that does that work here. Like, it's just really amazing to me, because they seem to all be going in a not intimate way of dealing of working with people. So yeah, that's my background and interest. And I think therapy, I mean, even medical field, like they used to have doctors come to the house, and people were a lot more intimate than they are now.
That's right.
So it's nice to see that.
Yeah. Actually, which reminds me that Tom Anderson, who we were talking about and we will be talking about, he started as a family doctor, right? It was his first practice that he was as a general practitioner was going to family homes. Thanks, Joanna. Michael, do you want to?
Yes, I'm Michael Frost. I am in Edmonton, and I am I'm doing a lot of, I guess you'd call it, advocacy work around invisible disability and access to oral health care and other primary health care here in Edmonton. I'm also beginning to explore the use of art and other creative methods to support work on creating a community garden space for people to come and gather and learn about growing food and food security issues, as well as exploring how to create social and human capital that is more respectful and inclusive of people of all abilities and related interests. The work that I am about to do really is just flowing from a potential transition in the work that I have been doing for the last 5, 6 years with Dr. Pamela Brett McLean and a few others at the University of Alberta who are helping me to grasp this area of interest and learning where sociology meets design meets other humanities disciplines and how they intersect with healthcare and the ways that they can empower people like myself who lives with autism and considers myself an autistic person to actually have meaningful contributions and engagement around our own healthcare rather than relying on a third party to essentially facilitate all of it, to allow and ask third parties to do specific bits of it, while at the same time reducing the stresses and anxieties that come along with the manifestations of autism and stuff. And I'm also in the process of using similar methods to support myself through some fairly major life transitions.
Wow, so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Thanks.
And I find myself reflecting a lot on all these various things around, well, what does care mean? How do we want to define care in this decade of the 21st century? How do we make it more inclusive of the individual that is receiving and in need of receipt of care, while also not promoting burnout among the primary carer that was tasked with looking after said individual? These are things that, as I am learning the language that is used in this field and get more comfortable with the broad diversity of methods that support the use of this language, the more I find myself reflecting on some of these other ideas around inclusion, care, moral distress, consent, capacity, and the fact that all of these things are very interrelated and extremely dynamic, even though the ecosystem of care, or the caring ecosystem that I find I'm doing a lot of self-advocacy and advocacy in, kind of views capacity and consent in the healthcare ecosystems as fairly static, and then makes a lot of improper judgments based on biases that were set up when less was understood about conditions like autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, Down syndrome, and the related groups of conditions that those and other people experience.
So Michael, one of the things that when you were talking, that kind of, is this okay, Pablo, just to open it up like this to ask some questions? Is that okay with you to, okay. One thing that was going through my mind when you were talking about advocacy. So if you had some themes of advocacy that would be important to you and for other people, what would those be? What would like be the immediacy of some?
Well, the immediate one that I am working on right now, is trying to understand the barriers that exist for use of supplemental communications in the primary health care and oral health care fields here in Edmonton, and why we can't teach practitioners to understand and interact with these methods. And I'm including here methods that would be not really considered as augmentative alternative communications because they're primarily based in the expressive arts and in ways of communicating that society assigns taboos to, that mean that it's right now very difficult to talk about things like tactile verbal communications, even though one of the privileges of being a volunteer at a respite care organization, as well as a primary care partner for a senior citizen, tells me that these kinds of communications need to be valued, and they allow for a depth of validation that doesn't exist within most dialogues right now because of concerns around sexual misconduct, concerns around high degrees of misinterpretation, and so on, and lots of issues around, well, okay, so there was a label assigned that said this individual was nonverbal. It means that we basically need to talk to whomever they brought with them and kind of cut them out of the picture. Well, no, that's not what you do. That's what I'm learning is incredibly harmful.
Mhm.
And even with some of the YouTubers that I follow that portray life with disability or caring for a disabled loved one, it's coming across quite clearly how even some of the things that they're trying to highlight and promote alternative ways of doing are very ingrained in society, even though they're working towards other outcomes. Like I am, I'm still shocked to see how we as a society are left to interact with some of these ideas.
So when you talk, I'm
And
going to interrupt you just for a second,
yes,
Michael, but when you talked about that things could be interpreted in a sexual way, because we always talk about intimacy when we do our
yeah,
research. We've been doing research for about over a decade. Or I've been doing research most of my life, but
mhm,
specifically at the Institute. And people talk about, even today, that we're like a family.
yeah,
And that having therapy does not feel like they're having therapy. And even with those words worry me. Does that make sense when
yes,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Be-
I understand that that's because of a lot of the taboos and stuff that exist and negative connotations around, oh, well, you need therapy, well, you need this, and past history that has, in certain segments of the population at certain times and certain locations resulted in people being like, okay, so this group here, I can basically do whatever I want to with through, and then all of a sudden society is like, well, to safeguard these vulnerabilities, we need to universally assign these kinds of things. And I'm now realizing that, well, yes, this is important of society, but we need to teach people how to start these important and delicate conversations that can help us create the dynamic boundaries that support the highly variable and dynamic vulnerabilities that all these people experience, so that we can maintain a boundary that keeps them safe while better engaging them in the interventions that can help them improve their quality of life.
So sometimes, I'll get these things from the licensing board, I'll get things from our malpractice insurance advice, or another organization that has malpractice advice. So their advice is, don't work with anybody that's hopeless. Don't work with anybody that has had multiple hospitalizations. Do not work with certain types of populations where it could be interpreted, like in-home therapy, okay, where it could be interpreted, why are people going into their home? Like, I don't know, Pablo, if you have to face things like this, in the Czech Republic, but, sometimes doing things that seem so common sense and they're alternative. Like, I remember when we first started doing this, and I think you knew that I changed what we did to community engagement, a collaborative recovery model, instead of just keeping it like it was before, was because the recovery model was a bill in California, and people were supposed to get a large amount of money in organizations. Of course, that money always goes to the same organizations, but it was more inclusiveness of that relationship that you can have with other people. So, for example, eating with other people was not like, some type of action that was against your license. That you could eat with people, you could serve them food, you could have, all these types of common things. When I go into a person's house, the first thing they ask me, would you like a drink? Not a cocktail, but, orange juice, a glass of water, something like that. And I do think that in that other part that I think that Michael was describing is this view of, well, are we doing something that is not right, and accepting a glass of water or a drink from somebody that would be in their home?
And to that, I would just ask, well, how do we go about advocating for person-led, person-centered care? Because it seems to me what we're talking about today here could fall under the realm of person-centered care, but all of my interactions to date with the concept are very much third-party led person-centered care, except when I come to presentations like this, where we're actually talking about what to me seems more genuine person-led, person-centered care.
Person-centered, or maybe also family-centered, or
Yes.
or network-centered. And sometimes the third party, I think it's also part of the network. It's quite quite often there is someone as a third party that said they need something, or they should have some support,
Mhm.
which is okay, of course, but if we want to work in this collaborative dialogic way, we need to have the third party there in the meeting. We need to involve their voice. We need to invite or make the voice alive.
Yeah. Mhm,
Yes.
mhm.
Okay, it's we have some 35 minutes for the rest of the workshop. I'm wondering how could we go on? Susan, what do you think? Should we should we say something more about our work, or
You know,
do you
you-
have some other ideas in your mind?
well, one of the things that, I loved was the story that you had, about that family and about the PowerPoint. So I didn't know
Oh, yeah.
if you wanted to go over a little bit of that. I love the picture in that, and I love the story behind the picture in that, and I think
Okay.
that has so much to talk.
Okay,
That is
okay,
important.
okay, yeah. So yes, well, we can make a small change that I will share the PowerPoint that we prepared and say something firstly about our work here in the Czech Republic in Brno. When I was listening to Michael and Susan, I also realized that the context here is quite different. Just let me share the screen. Okay. I will just go to other slide. Okay, I hope you can see this. We'll
Mhm.
put it in full screen. Can you see well?
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to go very much into the administrative or political context of what we do. I think if there would be such, because I was in a training with some people from US, and I know about these quite strict regulations and the licensing process that is quite demanding, and which is of course I realized that we haven't still developed so so professional licensing regulations in here, which is not so good from one side, that we the psychotherapy or family therapy is not so much regulated, but for us it's a big advantage because we can be very creative. There is not so many restrictions, so many regulations that we have to follow, which again it's of course it's problematic because people can get into troubles, and people can really meet some therapist that is not very good and does some ethical mistakes, and then the people cannot complain, for example. but for us, the lack of regulation and the lack of restrictions is good because we can do what we want to do. So it's just one note for what was said, but also just briefly about the organizational framework. I and a couple of my friends, we established a narrative group some 12 or 13 years ago. And we said we really want to develop the dialogic, the collaborative dialogic practices because it was not present in our country at all. It was mentioned in some systemic trainings, but the work that you, Susan, we were talking about Henry Gulish and Tom Anderson, it was really not present. So we put this as our goal. And we didn't, as a group, we didn't work with clients for most of the time. We all had our own practices or employments. Some of us worked in some NGO that was a service provider. Some of us had their own private practice. But we organized a lot of workshops, a lot of seminars, a lot of informal meetings that was kind of connected to collaborative dialogic practices. We invited a lot of people from abroad to come and to present a workshop. We organized conferences, and we still do. And we also grow. So now we are about 23 members of the group. This picture is from our board meeting, or like it's like an official meeting, but everything we do is really unofficial. It's really very informal. We have very friendly relationships, and so we have a lot of fun when we meet in person. Most of our meetings are online because many of us live in different parts of the country. So so this is narrative group. But 3 years ago, it was me from the narrative group who quite coincidentally formed a team of people that have their own lived experience with addiction, and they are both family members and the users or ex-users, and some of them were my clients. Or ex-clients rather, and they were very interested in finding some way of how they could be helpful to people that struggle with some addiction issues. And we formed this team. Before we formed this team, all these people went through a 1-year training in a recovery coaching. It's a term that we adopted from US and from the UK, and which makes them not like professional workers, because they don't want to be professional. They want to keep their lay attitude. They want to be humans foremost. They don't want to become professionals, but they wanted to have some connection with some ideas of how to connect to other people, how to think about ethical issues, how to think about the framework of the helping other people. So they also had some basic dialogical skills training within this recovery coaching training. And since I was at that time when this group was formed, the outreach team Recovery Brno, I was in a training in open dialogue in Helsinki. And I learned a lot about the network meetings. So the meetings when there are at least 2 therapists and we work with the network. So I introduced this this idea to the team, and we decided quite quickly that we want to do this, and we want to make this offer to the families who struggle with addiction or drug issues, that we can come to their home. We can come to their home as a team, as a pair of a therapist, and try to find a way how to help them. So in every meeting we go, there is one professional. Mostly it's me. Now I have another. We have another colleague who is also a professional social worker and a therapist. So there is always one professional and one peer worker, recovery coach. And one of the first clients we had was this family, Radka, Radek, and Filip. But for most of the time, we were meeting only Radka and Radek. They are parents of a 20-year-old boy who was very intensive crystal meth user. So he was using daily in a quite intensive and I would say destructive way. Destructive in a sense that even if the parents already said that he's not allowed to come to their house, he always was coming and crashed the door and stole things, stole money and other things from the home and ran away. They were calling police very often, but the police was not kind of helpful. They had many like really destructive problems because it was really threatening for them. They didn't feel safe at home because what their son was doing, and his adopted son. And so they found us, and we started to go to their home. We of course wanted Filip to join us as well, but it never happened. Like for 1 year, we met only the parents. The son was always invited, but we always was meeting only with the parents because he didn't come. And I made some notes from the meetings, and I think second or third meeting, Radka, the mother, said, I cannot live my life unless Filip stops using crystal meth. She was very desperate. She really was thinking about him all the time, thinking about what will happen next, thinking about his safety and so on. She was very, very desperate, and her husband was also desperate, but he was also desperate because his wife was desperate, because he was caring a lot about her mental health, so it was really very intensive meetings. Then Filip took part in a couple of meetings after 1 year, and he even went to a detox facility, but he stayed there only 2 or 3 days. And in that time, we were in a contact with him also, also individually, or we were meeting only with him about 2 or 3 times. So, and he was very much connected with my colleague, with Silva, who also she had a 10-year period of very intensive crystal meth use. So she really knew what he's going through. It was really very very close to her experience, and also to her experience with her parents when she also was kicked out of home, and she had very tense relationship with her parents at that time. So she also provided individual support for Philip, and it was very also the parents saw it as a really great success that he went to detox, but he left, and they were kind of disappointed, but slowly he started to build a new life even without the detox or without the treatment. And the parents decided that they will offer him that he can live with them again, that he can move to their house again. So he did, but they made a condition that he has to go through drug testing every other day, I think. And it was the last meeting we had with this family. We were there in their house, and Philip was supposed to be there too, but he wasn't. And we learned that he was tested positive on crystal meth 3 days ago. And after he tested positive, he said, well, yes, I understand, I have to leave. So I will leave and I will go to live with my friend. And he started to live with his friend in an apartment, in a rented apartment. And Radka, the mother, was disappointed, and she said, well, it's you know, he's still using. It's terrible, but I now I know that I need to live my life. I really need to live my life. And we started asking how it will look like, and she started to tell us the whole plan of what she will be doing. She said she will be starting to go to trips with her friend, and she will start visiting her sister that she almost stopped contact with. So she had and she will go. She will start to go to cafes with her friends and so on. So she had many ideas how she will be spending her time. And her husband, Radek, he was just looking at her with a really satisfied smile. And I could read in the eyes that as he would be saying, well, finally my wife will live her life as she wanted to. At the end of the meeting, Radka said, you know, I think we should interrupt our meetings, because I really need now to concentrate on my life, and I know how to go with my life. And so maybe we will call you next year, but now let's stop working like this. I will concentrate on my life. And so from one point of view, from the, I would say, traditional point of view, it was failed, because he is still using. We started to go there to the family where there is a 20-year-old son who is using crystal meth. And at the end of the work, the son is still using crystal meth. But from our point of view, it was a great success, because we were supporting especially these two people, Radka and Radek, and they started to live their life as they wanted. We also supported Philip, who also started to live his life. He started to live a really new life. He was no longer destructive. He was no longer aggressive towards his parents. He was very respectful. He was very appreciative towards his parents. He completely changed his relationships with them and also with his surroundings. So this is an example of our approach, I would say, and how it's different from the traditional model. And the picture, it's from their home. It's from their home. They always, the mother always baked and cooked before we came. So I was just telling Susan that it was always like a family visit, like a kind of a celebration of the really special moment when we came.
We need to see the food.
Sorry?
Can we see the food? The
You-
food.
You don't see it.
No, do you see the food?
Oh. The cake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now?
There, yes,
Okay.
yes. So, and Pavel, for this is something that, you know, I think that is so important. You know, we were talking about how people see us, how we interact with people, is that I think in order to have this relationship of humanity of one person with another, there's so much room for cakes, and there's so much room for conversations that don't have to have a fluorescent light above you and right or wrong answers. It's a process, and success is in the eye of the beholder, and just like beauty is. And so I think we're there along to help that be created for them, not in the ways that we think that should or should not happen. And I just love looking at the cake and thinking of the relationship that you have with your family. The other thing I just want to say very quickly, if your licensing board takes a more strict opinion of what you can and cannot do, that will not prevent good or bad therapy. Or I'll take out the good or bad, let's erase that. It will not reflect on what therapy is and how that occurs with people. You know, I'm just wondering if maybe, you know, maybe Emma and Michael and Joanna maybe have some ideas that they would, or reflections that they would have, just based upon what I consider very vibrant and living ideas.
Yeah, I love listening to the story, the authentic relationships that you were able to build. I'm interested, just, you know, in terms of the two therapists, because we work as a team of 3 or 4 as well, and I've really loved the concept of that. I've loved that kind of it avoids bias. Because certainly if one of us is feeling a little bit, you know, like we're not coming from a non-judgment point of view, that the others are able to challenge us on that. And I think it really provides a more authentic kind of way of working. Also gives that echo of the family's perspectives, and that we're all echoing their voices, and it kind of brings it to the forefront more. So I'm just interested, Pavel, from your perspective, what kind of that experience of the two therapists is for you.
Yeah, it's a really big difference. I was working alone before, and when we started to work like this, it's much more relaxing. I'm much more I feel less tense. I feel I really have more space for reflections. I have more space for giving voice to others.
Yeah.
So it's really a huge difference, and there is also it creates a space, a very safe space for expressing the lived experiences of the recovery coaches. It's really a nice nice way of how to bring some personal stories of the recovery coaches, and it's also inspiration for me as to be there also more as a person, not as a professional when I'm with them. Just today we had a very precious moment, I have to say, when there was well, by chance it was also two parents, mother and father today, and I was with my colleague who is a recovery coach with a family experience. So she's a family member. She's a partner of a person who had problems with alcohol, who had drinking problems in the past. So she has the experience of the family member, and at one point of the meeting, I was because the parents was talking about their son, who was at the last meeting, but he didn't come today. So they were talking about their son, and they have big worries about his smoking marijuana, his smoking cannabis very intensively, and but also they said that he's very sensitive, and they feel he needs a lot of support. And I was turning to Martina, to my colleague, and I said, well, I'm imagining that being someone who is very sensitive and being 18-year-old boy, it would be a bit of barrier when there is this thing as marijuana that is something that my parents hate and I love. So it creates a kind of, it can create a kind of a barrier in connecting with my parents. And she said, well, it's interesting, you know, I experienced this with my husband. When he was drinking, alcohol was my enemy. It was my enemy. But when I stopped seeing alcohol as an enemy, then it became different. And I'm realizing it now that it really was this moment when I stopped seeing alcohol as an enemy, when the change was happening. It was very, and there was a silence after this. Even the parents were very talkative. They started really to reflect on this idea, and then they started to talk in a very different way.
You know, I'm just going to add in there. I think what happens is that and Emma, I don't want to squash your voice, but I think what happens is that therapists are taught certainty, ideas, certainty, dialogues to help. And they very much want to help, but they get in the way of these types of conversations that they're finding their own solutions without us having to hold a solution for them. And those solutions are those pathways, or those embracing ways of being with each other is so powerful. And so I love it when that space can be made for for this to occur. Emma, I'm sorry, I stole your ideas. I just had to pop in there.
No, not at all. It was interesting to listen.
Yeah, I find this really interesting, this idea about how can an outside party better create the space and help the individual sort and prioritize their own ideas rather than bringing an outside idea and basically trying all manners of, well, how do we sell this to the party involved as the end all and everything that, you know, society likes to be, well, okay, you have this problem, here's your solution.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
How do we flip that from, okay, society has this operational idea of, okay, problem, solution. Whereas what really interests me is, can we get to a point where it's like, okay, so the individuals also often have their own solutions, but society needs a translator.
Mhm.
What does that look
Wow.
like?
Mhm. Yeah.
Any ideas?
Well, this is really something that we it's a bit tricky because this style of working really creates this feeling of the experts are not experts, or the experts don't know, or and but it also happened to us that sometimes it was too much, because the expectations that we will come with some specific solutions or really like specific ideas was really high. That they came there as they come to a doctor or to a lawyer, and so this is our situation now. Tell us. But so we need to keep our stance, but also to give something so that they are interested, they get curious about this, that they don't just end, okay, this is not what we wanted, we will go away and we will find another expert, an expert. So I think this is not easy sometimes. We have to deal with that somehow, that we and we have to be quite open, quite authentic, quite also quite give explanations why we are behaving like this, or why we are doing this. Sometimes it's
And I also think when we are able to embrace other people. So for example, if we have clients that they're involved with lawyers, they're involved with mandates, they're involved with DCFS caseworkers, we invite them into conversations. And we might have a cake. Does that make sense? It's a time of all being together. I liked what Emma was saying. We don't know what the outcome is going to be out of that meeting, but because it is a meeting, I think that invites embracive conversations, the likelihood of having some of those conversations is going to happen, rather than leaving them out, which often then creates conflict and tension.
And this again is why I'm drawn to learning more about these practices, because I realize that on many levels, we need to work towards promoting ideas where diversity of viewpoint is valued, rather than people seeking out a viewpoint that is similar to their own. And so I'm often left wondering if the job of a counselor or therapist needs to transition more from, well, I'm the expert in understanding these differences, to you are the expert, but you don't really understand parts of yourself to get to a point where you can identify, okay, are you willing to function with this, or do you want some third party to look after a little bit of it so that you can be more functional if parts of your struggle are looked after in good faith by a third party?
Mhm, mhm.
How does this conversation get more broad than just little gatherings like this?
Yeah, I love that. I truly do. And so, Pavel, what I was thinking of is that maybe at some point in time we could revisit this, like with some of the participants that would be interested. And so that these aren't just conversations that you have and then you go home and you think about things and then they
Mhm.
drift down,
Yeah,
instead
yeah,
of keeping it alive.
yeah. But I'm afraid we have to close the workshop now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's already
Okay.
the time. But it was very, very energizing.
Hmm.
I really appreciate that you joined us and that we could have this intimate conversation.
Mhm, mhm.
Thank
Hmm.
you.
Thank you
And,
for hosting it for us.
and hopefully many more conversations, right?
Hopefully, we will continue this dialogue in
Yeah.
future meetings.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Okay. So hugs to everyone, my friends. It was wonderful seeing everyone again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
To meeting you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.